let's get her underway. Hey, folks, it's Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado Jenny Petticoat.
And Psychic Tom Pheasant with a bright crystal ball.
All right.
Raring to go.
Well, we got quite a bit to discuss this week. We have lots of boxing coming back. We don't get UFC coming back yet. That's next weekend. But we got some other MMA news to talk about. Primarily, the combination news with boxing and MMA this week is surrounding Claressa Shields. She's obviously kind of looking past her boxing opponent here, and now is talking about fighting in the UFC. And she's already pretty much decided that she'll be fighting Amanda Nunes. And she's actually even committed to a training camp. She's going to do it with John Jones and the guys out in the Winklejohn Jackson camp out there in Arizona. So,
how much does she weigh? What does she fight at?
Junior middleweight is the title she's fighting for Friday night. I don't know exactly what weight that is. Probably 150 something.
154.
164.
150.
50.
Well, that's you say junior middleweight or middleweight?
Junior.
Oh, junior. Okay, yeah, 154. Okay, so that would put her within range. She could probably drop to 145 then.
Yeah. So yeah, she's basically hoping to make millions in those fights, and obviously that means they're allowed to fight more than once. But Friday night, tomorrow night, she's going to be facing a tough test in the regular ring before she even can think about going to the cage. She's probably going to want to come out on top in that one. But she says, I think I'm going to do great because I thought wrestling would be the hardest part for me, but I did maybe a 2-hour session with Adeline Gray, and when I left, I wasn't annoyed because she was grabbing me, and I kind of had to get out of stuff. She showed me how she did everything, and I had to do it back on her, and I just remember it being so fun. And I hate people grabbing me in boxing, she added, but if we're practicing wrestling, it makes it more enjoyable. But she also adds, I'm trying to, end of the year 2020, have my first MMA fight. I don't know with what organization, but I definitely want to do it and, of course, win. But she's not even 10-0 in boxing yet. She's going for her 10th win this week, and only 2 of those are knockouts. So Amanda Nunes, this is a tough test to be calling out first. And we've had other fighters cross over, and obviously Holly Holm came over and got the championship belt briefly. But as far as over the bulk of their careers so far, it seems like a lot of them have been up and down. Because, you do have to learn all the other stuff, but when you consider boxing the prime source of your talent, it's hard to break a lot of those habits that you have to break to be good at MMA. So, somebody like her with an undefeated record, I don't think it's really been done. I mean, Holly Holm had a few losses before she came in, but she also had dozens of fights. This is a girl that had most of her fights in the amateurs. So, I would definitely not knock her for trying. But I gotta say, I'm gonna be one of those people who the jury is still out until I see some results.
Yeah, it's going to take a little more than 2 hours on the ground, that's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, she says super fights against Amanda Nunes should pay them millions. So obviously she says she doesn't know for sure which organization she's going to, but chances are the one with the biggest paycheck to offer is going to be the UFC. But at the same time, how the hell is that going to happen before the UFC formalizes their Zuffa boxing situation? Because she's not going to want to be one of those people who can only do the UFC. Especially if she has a bad result in her first fight. So either they'll have to do an exclusive official contract with just her that's different from the other fighters, or they'll have to change their policies and allow boxing. So I just don't know. I think she'd rather sign with Bellator where she can do both and not take shit. But anyway, she's going to finish the fight with Habazin on Friday, and then she's going to go right to John Jones's camp and start working. But she thinks that her versus Nunes would be better than Mayweather versus McGregor at the least. That's not too hard to do. But anyway, ridiculous. But basically, Shields is already saying that Nunes came out publicly and said she wanted $1 million to get in the ring with her. And she said, I told the team, I told manager Mark Taffet and Showtime, give her $2 million, whatever you got to do to get her in there, because it's worth the pay. Still, give me my money too, $2 million, $3 million, whatever, because a fight of that caliber is going to have high viewership, pay-per-views, all that. So, anyway, I don't know as far as the UFC goes, how many fighters have actually been paid $1 million or more for one fight.
Good point. Very good point.
So I don't see how that would be possible if you're talking about fight purse. For a first fight, never. Never in the history of sports would anybody even accept that. Not that it wouldn't be worth it, but I just don't see the UFC stepping up to that caliber. But if they can do it with sponsors and that sort of thing, and figure out a way to pay her outside the purse, then it might not piss as many people off as it would if they just give them that money in the purse. I think Brock Lesnar was probably the highest paid young in his career fighter, like with such little experience to get that much money was just unheard of. But he did come from wrestling, and he did come with a huge audience that he brought with him. So he justified that. Whereas Shields, female boxing is not very popular. Not at all. Way more popular than it used to be, but just not very popular in the grand scheme of things. So that's why she probably feels like she has to do both sports to get any respect and financial support, basically, for the whole thing. And to be able to retire and be comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because your question, it was going so good for her in boxing, why would she want to cross over?
Yeah, the other girls have said the same thing. There's more money in MMA for the females because they're starting to get more mainstream, and like I always said, it probably isn't as significant now, but when the female divisions first started taking hold, they would seem to fight harder than the men, and it was kind of like that chip on their shoulder that they wanted to prove that women could fight. So a lot of times they would steal the show, and it's the whole reason why for years and years and years on the show we would have tons of women fighters, and that also stemmed from watching a female wrestler on my high school team break the gender barrier and go on to Harvard and wrestle there. So I've seen it firsthand how a woman has something to prove. She's going to freaking prove it if she's dedicated enough. So I definitely get the sentiment of wanting to really step up and improve your game and just represent women as a gender. But
well, it seemed like there were bigger names back then too.
Yeah, but
in women's boxing, I mean, we can all think Layla Ali and Ann Wolf.
Yeah,
look at her.
And our former guest, Christy Martin, she's training folks now.
Yeah, Lucia Riker. I mean, you come up with those names, and now it's just it's kind of a ghost town.
Yeah, but it's just one of those situations where boxing for females, that one card really that blew it out was the Christy Martin fight on HBO. I think it was on the Tyson undercard. And
Mike Tyson, Frank Bruno.
yeah.
In the rematch.
So
she fought a girl named Deidre Go-Gritty, Irish girl.
Yeah. And
That's pretty good for Rainman, ain't it?
Really good. That was actually an emotional interview, too, because we talked about a lot with Christy. And there was a lot of abuse going on with her husband and stuff like that I had just found out about before the interview, and we got into a little bit of that, and yeah, it was all around pretty good stuff. But it's such a different landscape now. You don't see any women headlining boxing fights unless it's overseas, really, except for this one with Claressa, because she's just lighting the sport up. Just being a character, kind of like the female Floyd Mayweather, very confident, very outspoken, and backs it up. It's just the most important thing to being famous. She definitely backs it up. Obviously, she's got kind of a bad rap going into this weekend because of the hype, the shenanigans before the last fight. But that's kind of not so much on her as it is on her is it brother-in-law or something like that actually attacked the guy. But we all know what happens with entourages. They're not always full of the best people that you need on your side.
So you always have a great entourage.
Yeah.
Brock Newman all the way down.
Yeah, actually, I was just talking to a friend of mine about how back in the day there was rumors that Dana White was sleeping around with the ring girls and that he actually screwed Mandy Moore at one point. And so my friend was like, I don't really like Mandy Moore. And I'm like, really? She was pretty big back in that day, when the Entourage was going on, and she was in that show, and she was the guy's main character's girlfriend for a little bit. And he's like, yeah, that's probably why I don't like her, because I did watch a lot of that show. But yeah, that was one of those things. Brought up the subject of Dana White's mom who we also interviewed, and she had that lawsuit that came after because somebody that Dana was very good friends with was just blasting her on the internet and spreading all kinds of lies about her and the rest of the family. But anyway, I digress. So last week we didn't have too much going on. It really, literally has one fight result on BoxRec for last week. Saturday the 4th, Juan Jose Velasco beat Leonardo Fabio Amatrano. And I haven't heard of either guy. And then, obviously, tomorrow night we have the Habazin fight there. I don't know why that's not showing on the main page here. But we'll look at the Friday fights and we'll look at the Saturday action. The big one Saturday is Joe Smith Jr. coming back against Jesse Hart.
Yeah.
Who I believe was on the Contender, wasn't he?
Jesse Hart? No. Jesse Hart, former world title challenger, is the son of former Philadelphia fighter Eugene Cyclone Hart. Jesse Hart is he fought for the super middleweight title. And of course, the guy's name is drawing a blank on name. Zapata, something like that. It was something with a Z. And he got up off the canvas, took him to the distance, lost a close decision. Gets a rematch, another close fight, loses another close decision. So then he moved up to light heavyweight. First fight was against Sullivan Barrera, always a tough character. Won a decision over him. So now he's fighting Joe Smith Jr. And this is, in a way, being billed as a grudge match because Jesse Hart is a protege of Bernard Hopkins. Right. And he's, idolized Hopkins for years. Joe Smith Jr. is the last guy to have beaten Hopkins when he knocked him out of the ring and scored the only stoppage loss of B-Hop's career. So
Drama. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now it's kind of like a revenge fight. I actually was interested in going to Atlantic City for this card this weekend, but it's my nephew Dominic's birthday, and I wasn't sure when the party was going to be. And then I'm like, do I really want to be in AC all on Saturday, trying to get home late, and then having a early afternoon party with a bunch of screaming children the next day at Chuck E. Cheese? I'll watch the one on the I'll watch this one on ESPN.
Yeah, I love that post of yours. I hope they don't.
Yes, I got to send it to Tom. Tom, actually, there's a sign at the one Chuck E. Cheese where it has a picture of 2 9-year-olds that were thrown out in 1985, and it says an age enhancement photo of what they may look like today. Do not let them in. And it may or may not be me and my friend Mike, who have not been there since we got thrown out in 1985 when we were 9. It was my birthday.
I got to see this.
And they didn't even give me a balloon.
And speaking of Facebook, you'd probably be proud of me the other night, Tom, because when all the shit was going down with Iran and they were shooting missiles towards us in Iraq, I posted a little GIF file of a guy throwing a bottle rocket on the ground and it coming right back and shooting him in the eye. And I said, something's about to go real bad with this retaliation attempt. And, well, it couldn't have gone worse. I look like a real psycho. And it's weird because, like, it's a different climate now. Like, you if you put political stuff on Facebook, even if it's funny as hell, you're only going to get so many likes because people are afraid to take a stance.
Or not even likes. It's you're going to get backlash more than anything, which is ridiculous. You know, you can't even come out there and say, man, I'm glad Donald Trump stood up and did this. Oh, my God, you're a Nazi. We should apologize to the Iranians. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, right.
Apologize to my head.
Oh,
and it's so blatantly political. I mean, if Obama would have done it, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's just so...
Well, that's the thing. Like,
I'm telling you guys...
You talk about a surgical strike.
Like this.
You can't get any more surgical than killing the people and only the people you were going after. You know, Obama did how many freaking attacks? Even Clinton, when they were going after Osama the first time. They shot up a friggin' encampment with a bunch of civilians. And then he went and shot up a friggin' wedding with kids and women.
Yeah. But remember, Rich, facts don't matter in this climate today.
Exactly.
I have never seen anything like this. Yeah. Ever. This has got to be like what it was like in 1859 or 1860 or something like that. I hate to think like that.
And honestly, I really don't know what CNN is going to do if Trump loses, because they will have nothing left to cover.
They'll have 4 more years of hysteria.
Oh, my God.
But I don't think it matters with their ratings. I think it makes much difference.
Yeah, well, then they got the big lawsuit they settled. There must have been at least a few million they had to shell out for that, with the kid with the money.
Hey, while we're on that, while we're on saying, why are they on in the airports all the time? I wonder what kind of contract they have for that.
I don't know.
You notice that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
My friend was asking me that about the hospital rooms, too, you know. I'm guessing the hospital because of Obamacare. You know, all those hospital people love Obamacare. So Democratic. But airports, I don't know. That's a good one. Well, maybe it's because so many people are used to that being the main 24-hour news network. And they do pretty much do 24 hours worth of stuff. They don't repeat it all like Fox News does at night. You know, they'll go over to the UK people, but the problem with how they do it now is they still do 90% of their coverage on Trump and Trump alone.
Yeah.
They don't go overseas enough anymore.
It's the same voices, you know. I like to hear those monitors. It's the same words. Yep.
But getting back to boxing. Former guest of ours is in action also on Friday at bantamweight. They called her the real $1 million baby back when I got... I actually didn't have her on the show, but I think I interviewed her when we had a MySpace page, and that was all we were. Back in the real day. But she took a little bit of a break over the years. She had an issue with seasonal affective disorder. She went out west for a while. Now she's back on the East Coast here in Florida. She's 28-2, and it sounds like it's a bit of a tune-up fight. Martina Horgas, she's 5-5. And then the co-main event is David Estrada, 29-6, against Javier Frazier, who's 8-12. So there's more than one fight where the females are still main eventing, but may not be as competitive as people want it to be. And we got a Showtime card here in Iowa, and it's Shojahan Ergashev in the main event at super lightweight. He's undefeated at 17-0, fighting Adrian Estrella, who is 29-4. Then we got somebody's O's got to go. Vladimir Shishkin, 9-0 at super middle, fighting Ulysses Sierra, who's 15-0-2. And we got super flyweights Jericho O'Quinn, 13-0-1, fighting Oscar Vasquez, who's 15-2-1. And here's a Z name for you, Tony. Miguel Zamudio. He is 44-15-1 at super lightweight, fighting Brandon Lee, Brandun. He is 17-0, so that's kind of an interesting fight there. Experience versus youth, undefeated versus tested. Then we got the final fight of the night. Is kind of a mismatch. The only mismatch on the card. 15-0 Brian Norman Jr. against Vincie Dixon, who's 9-24-2. So I don't think he has much chance of pulling this one out. We're getting pretty close to the big one. Oh, why is that not on here? Is it Friday or Saturday that the big fight with Habazin is? I don't see it on here at all. Friday.
The one in Atlantic City's on Saturday.
Oh, okay. I thought for some reason it was Friday.
No.
All right, so we'll go to Saturday.
Looks like a pretty good card, and you know what I like now? And like I said, a year ago, it was literally just about a year ago when I got my first, Fire Stick Roku, whatever they're called, and downloaded the ESPN Plus app. I didn't understand all these apps and everything, and I first thought you'd be like watching, the fights on your phone, and I was like, I got a 50-some-inch TV. I want to be able to watch it on there. I don't want to watch the fights on my phone. That's ridiculous. And someone's like, no, you jackass. You got a phone. You make your TV a smart TV. Is your TV a smart TV? I said, I don't know. I'm too stupid to know that. I'm not smart enough to know if my TV is smart. And then they're like, well, no, you got to get this. And but now they have these cards. And back in the day, you're going to have an ESPN card on a Saturday night. So, okay, I'm going to turn this card on, and at 9 o'clock it starts, and you have two fights, two 10-rounders or two 12-rounders, so on and so forth. Well, you know that there's 6, 7, or 8 fights that are on that card before that, and sometimes these are really good fights, and you just didn't have access to them. The only way, if the first fight ended relatively early, and they say, hey, let's show this fight that happened earlier in the evening. Okay. Now you got these apps, so they say, okay, ESPN starts at 9 o'clock, but at 6:30, from 6:30 to 9, you got 2.5 hours of the entire undercard, which is great, because that gives you a chance to see a lot of these young and up-and-coming and talented fighters that you can then, follow. You can, they can build a following. Guys can see them early in their career. I'm excited because South Philly owns Sonny Conto, who's been training with Tyson Fury. I'm sure soon as this fight's over, provided it all goes well, he'll be flying out to Vegas to get Fury ready for the Deontay Wilder fight.
Right. Well, we got the Jesus fight of the week anyway. From Argentina, we'll get to the rest of them here. Jesus Adrian Danef. He is 7-2-2, fighting Brian Nahul Sanchez, who's 4-4. So Jesus got a good chance to win the Jesus fight of the week, for sure. And you gotta love this fight here. It's not for any title, not very significant, but we got 2-0 Sohaib El Cialiti, 2-0, fighting Ramon Urbina, who's 4-2. 20-2, but he did win his last fight, so might be competitive.
So he was 3-20-2 going into that one.
Yeah.
Now he's got all even numbers. Oh, I'm doing numerology in my head now. Let's see, 22. Okay, that's 4. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I found out today numbers can be very deceiving when we went to the supermarket to cash in all my change. And I don't know if there was a glitch in the machine, but we brought a very small container of change, and it turned out to be $45. And they said there was 160 quarters in there. And I'm thinking, well, maybe there was some money stuck in the machine before. I don't know. But yeah, it was like, wow. Who knows? Maybe it was right on, but it was just like a little, one of those Tupperware containers you could put a sandwich in, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it was. $45 worth of change.
Rich, that's not shocking because I have a change machine in my house right now, and it's only about the size of maybe about the same height, maybe a little bit taller, and maybe a little bit wider than a normal standard peanut butter jar. Mm-hmm. And right now, because it counts, like I only put quarters in it, right?
Right.
I have quarters in it right now, and it has mathematically added $125.
Wow.
And I'm only 1/3 of the way full of it. So you figure, if I fill up this wide, slightly taller peanut butter jar, I'm looking at $300 in quarters.
Mm-hmm. Well then.
Right?
I stand corrected. We were just both looking at me and my girlfriend like, are you serious? It's still going? All right. Well, here's our mismatch of the week before we move on to the big fights. This card is full of mismatches, but I think this one is the biggest one. 5-0 Jungin Choi against 0-4-1 Muhammad Adams. And for some reason, they have his name highlighted and they have a flag next to Muhammad. I don't know what that's all about. Is that the commission red flagging the fight because it's suspicious? I don't know.
Well, remember, he had one draw, so he hasn't lost every fight.
Yeah.
Got to look at the bright side here. That's what you tell him in trading, right?
Right.
Hang in there, kid.
So anyway.
You ain't lost them all.
Light heavyweights in New Jersey on ESPN. This is regular ESPN too, right? Not Plus, looks like. Light heavyweights. Joe Smith Jr., he's 24-3. Jesse Hart is 26-2. Both of them have lost 2 in their last 6. But Smith, I think he's got 3 in a row going for him. And it looks like Jesse lost his last one. So this could be a tough one for both guys. We don't know, if Styles are going to make this one or how it's going to go, but they both...
Tony, what is Hart's style? Yeah, have you seen him fight?
Yes, I've seen Jesse. I've seen him fight on TV. I've also seen him fight live a couple times. Jesse is your consummate boxer puncher. He has long arms, very educated jab. So he is, almost like, a later Bernard Hopkins style. Not so much with the clinching, but, he'll sit there and he'll try to control using his legs, using his reach. He has above average power. Certainly, you wouldn't consider him a banger or a knockout puncher, but he can get you out of there when necessary. So he is a skilled fighter. He is a well-schooled fighter. So his primary strategy out there is to box, pick his shots, take the knockout if it comes. Joe Smith is almost the opposite. Joe Smith is a very rugged guy. He's very strong. He's physical. He's tough. He's a construction worker during the day. You can tell he's just a thickly built, solid, strong, physical guy. So he has a big right hand. So he is going to be more of your puncher boxer. where he's going to be the aggressive fighter. So this is a fight that, on paper, the Hart's going to be the favorite fighter. He's done it a little bit longer. He's maybe got a little bit more of a boxing pedigree. Maybe he's a little bit more technically proficient, where Smith is going to be a very live underdog because of his strength, because of his durability, because of his right-hand punching power, especially against a guy that only a year or so ago was fighting super middleweight. Now that extra 7 pounds on there. So you're going to see Jesse's going to try to control the action in the center of the ring, use his jab, use his angle, use his footwork, set up his right hand, set up his left hook, double the jab up, follow it with the right hand. The more he fights inside, the worse it can be for him, because Smith is that strong physical presence on the inside, where he's going to bring the fight to Hart, and he is going to try to set up a home for that right hand and back Hart against the ropes. The closer in proximity the fight is, the more it leans towards Smith. The more it is a one-way action fight, the more it leans towards Hart.
Well, it should be entertaining. On paper, like you said, on paper, it could really be great.
Yeah, like here's ones like you have, like sometimes you'll get a fight and with two very skilled fighters, but they're both counterpunchers, and the fight's not going to be very good. And they're both sitting there trying to make the other guy take the lead, and it's more of like a you go first. It's like a chess match where neither guy wants to bring out his king or his queen. And they're both out there, waiting for the other guy to make the first move. You have other ones that are good because the fighter A maybe is the less skilled chess master, but he's very aggressive. So you have to be able to counter his moves. Even if you are a fighter that likes to be cerebral in there, you don't have time to do that, because this guy is bringing his queen out, and he's coming after, you, and he's looking to, topple your king as soon as possible, even if it's unconventional.
Right. Well, we also have a pretty decent co-main event on that one. Super middleweight, Steven Nelson, undefeated, 15-0, and Sem Killick, 14-0. So on paper, that's a great one. I don't know what their knockout percentage is, but it's for the WBO, NABO super middleweight title, so there's some hardware on the line. And then the other fights aren't just that spectacular, but we do have Tony's buddy, heavyweight, Sonny Conto, 5-0, against Curtis Head, who's 5-4, and he's going to get punched in the head quite a bit, I think.
Unintended.
Yeah. Now, there's one fight on the card. I just got to mention the guy's name. I won't even tell you who he's fighting, because you probably never heard of him. But this guy, he's got a big name to live up to. His name is Corey Champion, and he's 1-1. So he's not having a good start.
Yeah.
Corey Champion. That's some big shoes to fill. And then we go down Saturday to the Alamo Dome in San Antonio for Jamie Munguia versus Gary O'Sullivan. Munguia 34-0.
Nice step up for Munguia.
Yeah, and Sullivan is an ornery boxer. I've seen him live in Boston, and he's one of those Irish savages out there in the ring. I believe years ago we were talking about it on the show. He was in an incident with a stool being thrown from his corner, something like that. I don't think there was any major injury, but it was just, this guy throws stools, so be careful. Anyway, co-main event should also be pretty decent. Female fight for two titles, WBC and WBO World Female Super Middleweight title. Franchon Cruz Dezern, 6-1, and Alejandra Jimenez, who's 12-0-1. The hits keep on coming on this card. Surprised it's not showing any televised. any television setup. But Travel Mazion at super welterweight, he's 16-0, fighting Fernando Castaneda, who's 26-13 with one draw. Then we got undefeated Hector Tanahara at lightweight, who's 18-0, fighting Juan Carlos Burgos, who's 33-3-2. And I'm going to guess it's either his brother or his cousin, Jose Alejandro Burgos, also on the card, 17-2, fighting Josh Franco, who's 15-1-2. And then Luis Alberto Rios, 25-5-1, fighting Hector Valdez, who is 11-0. Keeps on coming, too. Another good one. A super featherweight, Angel Fierro, 16-0-1, against Alex Martin, who's 14-3. That about rounds off the top of the card. So is it... did I mistake the... I still haven't seen the friggin' Claressa Shields fight. Is that next week? I was wondering, it was this week.
Yeah, I thought it was coming up soon.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I saw some on TV talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing. Maybe I gotta look her up by physical name here. Let's try that. Alright. Enter name or ID. It's almost like, oh, did we not hear something about the fight getting canceled again? Breaking news! No, I don't know yet. Claressa. Let's find out. There she is. Oh, she was 63-1 as an amateur. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's it. That is a professional record.
So, Ivana Habazin. It says 110. Ocean Resort Casino, Atlantic City, but it's not on that card. I did not see it on that card on BoxRec, so somebody fucked up over there.
Yeah.
Ivana Habazin, she's 20-3. Did lose her last fight, but this one's for some titles. Vacant WBC, vacant WBO, World Female Super Welterweight title. And it was Christina Hammer who got the axe in the last fight from Shields. She was 24-0 going in, so it bodes very well for Claressa that she's going to get the job done here. She's only lost once in her whole boxing career. So, and, I don't know how far back that was in her amateur career, but that's pretty impressive to go 63-1 in her amateur career. Wish I'd known that sooner. I wouldn't be so surprised by her rise to fame. She has kind of come out of nowhere, even though she did win the gold. I don't know, only 2 KOs, but she definitely handles her opponents pretty well. Anyway. We also have a little bit of a preview on some upcoming fights. FightNews.com did. What used to be our rival. Fight News Unlimited. The guy threatened me who owned FightNews.com actually at one point. Yeah, his nickname in the business was Flat Top for some reason. I never understood it. I never got the reason why. But yeah, back when I first started Fight News Unlimited, I wasn't even really big yet. You know, only big enough because I had the Zion story going. But yeah, Flat Top called me right on the phone, found my number, and he's like, yeah, FightNews.com is a little bit concerned that you're stepping on our name, so we need you to change your domain name. I said, no, I'm all set. It's not confusing at all, so I don't think I have to change it. And I didn't even know anything about the law at that point. This is way before any of the legal stuff, so that was just kind of funny. I was just like, no, get out of here. I'm keeping it. Anyway. The first defense of the new flyweight king of the World Boxing Council, Julio Cesar Martinez, has already been announced. He'll be the co-star of the fight between Mikey Garcia and Jesse Vargas in Frisco, Texas, on February 29th. A guy named Harris. I don't see his full name here. This is deeper in here. Oh, they got the old read more button. I haven't been here in a while, so I don't know if they're going to make me pay beyond this. The fight will take place at the Ford Center at the Star, which is near Cowboy Stadium. And it's the same place that hosted Manny Pacquiao against Joshua Claudy, and Manny against Margarito, and Canelo Alvarez versus Liam Smith back in 2016, and then last one last year when Errol Spence dominated Mikey Garcia. So, and then WBC is also in the selection stage of what Mexican culture will be chosen to create the 2020 Adolfo Lopez Mateos belt, which will be made to celebrate the fights of May 5th and September 16th. That's kind of weird. But, what's new? John Scully will love hearing about that one. The commemorative belt has been of great interest to the world, as these belts have become unique pieces that highlight the magnificence of the Mexican culture. Okay. We know WBC is big on Mexicans. What else we got? Okay, so in summary, coming soon, 2019, and it was a great year, and it will not be easy to determine the winners of various categories, which are Champion of the Year, Fight of the Year, Event of the Year, Knockout of the Year, Dramatic Fight of the Year, Humanitarian Award, and Revelation of the Year. So they're actually over at Fight News asking for help. You can participate in the process with WBC Boxing by going to wbcboxing.com, and there's an interesting summary there of the candidates and their merits. So maybe we'll take a look at that at some point and talk about that before the month is over, since we didn't really do a good job of, I didn't do a good job of previewing that last week when I picked a fight that wasn't even in 2019.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was going to be a more inclusive list of upcoming stuff, but it's all WBC stuff over there. Here's an interesting article about 10 UFC fighters who died this past decade. This is whatculture.com, which is a site I've never even heard of. But, this lists some 10 to 9. Number 10, Sherman Pendergast, the Tank. He was a heavyweight fighter out of Baltimore. Wrestled at the collegiate level for Old Dominion. And then he trained at Militich Fighting Systems. He had a solid 8-3 record. Got his chance to fight in UFC 2006. Or in 2006. I don't think we've gotten to that number yet. That'll be the day. He's a former collegiate wrestler, obviously, but he made his promotional debut at UFC 65. Took on Anthony Hardonk. Things didn't go so well. He got TKO'd. Leg kicks. That's really what did it in the first round. And that would be his only fight in the UFC. He fought for 5 more years, but struggled to get his career back on track. He finished up as an 11-8 fighter with 1 no contest. In 2011, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, and then, despite the diagnosis, he competed one last time before he died in July of 2012 at the age of 45. And a lot of this stuff is obviously going to be, people are going to wonder, of course, what kind of impact did a fighting career have on his death, and even cancer. You know, you never know, especially back in those early days, what kind of ridiculous enhancements these guys were doing, and painkillers, and you know, a lot of that stuff can be toxic to your system. So I would not doubt it one bit. I'm not calling the guy a juicer by any means, but I don't know enough about him. But it's a possibility, just kind of putting it out there, that you're going to see a lot more of these cases with some of these old school fighters because they put their body through so much bullshit to put the MMA sport itself on the map. Ryan Jimmo was another one. July 2012 at UFC 149, the Canadian light heavyweight made his promotional debut and knocked out his opponent, Anthony Perosh, in just 7 seconds. Tied for the second fastest in UFC history at the time. And then he was actually a reality star in the Ultimate Fighter series, too. He lost his bout to gain entry into the house, though, but they eventually signed him anyway. Despite the hot start that he had, he just had a tough go of it after that. He compiled a 3-4 record with the promotion and got released in May 2015. And then he had a little fight outside the cage in 2016. He got murdered. A verbal altercation between him and a man named Anthony Getchell took place in a parking lot at 2:15 a.m. Getchell was inside a pickup truck at the time and drove over him as he was walking away. 34-year-old guy at the time. And Getchell later pleaded guilty to manslaughter. So we can't blame that on any adverse effects of fighting other than maybe his temper. But, you know, I don't know. It's tough in those scenarios to really predict what caused the situation to get out of hand. You never know with those types of things. What's going to happen when somebody says the wrong thing or pushes the wrong button. I used to know a kid at Norwich who was really good at pushing buttons, and even though he was a really good friend of mine, a couple times I was about to throw him off a cliff.
You know, you get people like that, you know? And it sucks, but there are people that, and they get off on that because, you know, in most times in normal society, especially today as we've gotten older, you know, you can't really do anything about it. Unfortunately, sometimes you do anyway.
Right.
And we have, like, every year, you know, you'd have guys, you know, everywhere you go, that, like, sometimes the people that they like to cause issues, or you've had people that you work with that, like they like to, you know, cause, you know, drama at work. And you really can't do anything because, you know, it's obviously, you know, a big trouble. But then sometimes, you know, it's like, you know, I work at the Christmas tree lot, and sometimes, you know, I have, you know, disagreements with some of the guys there. And what I like to do is, I know most of these guys, and I'll play around with them a little bit, and I always just give them a little shot in the rib, just like playing around, yeah, bam, and I hit them in the rib, and then they know, you know, like, oh shit, he's like, even the one guy that I'm friends with, we were joking when we were working last month, and he goes, you know what? He goes, I knew you fought, and he goes, and I knew all this stuff and everything, but he goes, I never really understood the concept of it until we were playing around, and you grazed me in the ribs with a shot, and I couldn't breathe for a matter of minutes, and I was trying to put the tough front on and, you know, kind of bluff that I wasn't hurt. He goes, thank God we weren't fighting. He goes, because I thought you actually had cracked my rib. And he goes, and I know you only went about 25%. I'm like, exactly. But at the time, for a guy that likes to, you know, always talk shit and be mouthy and this and that, he doesn't usually do that with me. And we're friends, yeah. We have a guy that works in my office. Now, you know, it's like sometimes when you're running your mouth about somebody, but you don't know who you're running your mouth about.
Right.
Like, we have a guy in our office. He's universally hated because he's pompous, he's arrogant, and he's rude, it's like, when you started off at the first time and you see people in the hallway, you always, good morning, hello, whatever. And he always just give you like this look, like this pompous looking down on you look. All right, well, fuck you then. I'm not going to say hello to you no more. So, and then about a year or so later, we were having some system issues from my company. My Center City company was having some system issues and was causing a problem with his account. So he comes up to our department and he's yelling at the one woman in our department about this system issue the insurance company's having. And he goes, I understand there's a rep from the insurance company that's in this, that works in this building. Well, I'd like to have a talk with this person. Doesn't know if it's a male or female. This person. And give this person a piece of my mind. And I remember the one girl that was like sitting a matter of feet away. She said to me, she goes, I was praying to God you had your headphones on and you didn't hear it. I'm like, nope, I heard every word of it. So I put it in the bank. Okay, I remember it. And then another day he's saying something and I hear it again. Okay, still doesn't know who I am. See me in the hallway all the time. Now, I wear a jacket there, and I usually walk outside during lunch, that says Team Tornado Boxing. So now you see a guy, and you can tell that I'm relatively built, I'm relatively big, I'm physical, I'm strong. You can tell that just by looking at me. Now you're seeing, oh shit, and he boxes too? Oh, Jesus Christ. So now, when I'm walking, if he's outside and I'm walking past him, I get a very angry look on my face. And I kind of, like, almost like I'm walking in a training method. And I'm power walking, and I got, like, a snarl on my face, like a Rocky Balboa, and I'm snorting a little bit, and I'll kind of spit out on the ground when I'm doing it, just when I walk past him, just to let him know, like, this guy might be a little bit, him thinking, shit, not only is this guy big and strong that can box, but he seems like he's a little mentally unstable. Oh, kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
Now, recently there was another system problem, and something got denied for one of his family members. So he comes up and he's yelling at the woman in the department, and he's sending an email that he's going to contact his attorney and this and that. She sends it to me. I look at it. I send it in to get reviewed, and then he sent an email back to her. Okay, I understand this will probably have to be resolved, so on and so forth, and blah, 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 blah. So now, once again, he doesn't know that I've seen this. So today, I'm in the lunchroom, I'm getting my coffee, I'm joking with people I know, he comes in. My smile goes to like a snarl. And I'm getting my coffee, and I'm walking by, and he almost bumps into me, and he gives me like a oh, we're going in the, like, oh, sorry, we're going in the same direction. I don't look at you. Because you know what? I don't like you. You don't deserve my acknowledgement. Because the day I look at you is the day you're going to regret. And one day, we're going to bump into each other outside of the office, outside of your protected area. And then you're going to have to answer for being the pompous, arrogant dick, trying to make threats, talking behind someone's back when you didn't know they were right 10 feet from you.
All right. Well, tell us how your workday went, Tony. Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, it's another thing too, that the kids online. You know, I talked about it a few weeks ago with the Norwich group that I'm part of with the memes, and they're so fucking sensitive about some of these things. It's like so easy to get them pissed off. And then they shoot back this okay boomer thing to get us pissed off, and they're purposely intent on pissing us off, when most of us, being the older generation, are just trying to educate these kids. Just trying to tell them how the real world works, basically. And they just want to poke fun and be disrespectful. So it's like such a big problem these days.
You're 100% right, Rick. You know, like I said, a lot of these kids, like, hey, you know, when we were growing up and when Tom was growing up, you know, obviously there isn't the social media. You don't have the keyboard warriors like you do now. You know, you said something like that, you were going to get confronted over it. You said something in school, or let's say me and you were in the same class and we had an issue and I was going over and talking shit on you. well, you know what? You're going to get me outside on my way back to the school bus, and now I got to confront you. Unfortunately,
Face to face.
doesn't happen. Yeah. Yep. I remember, the funny thing is, this was shortly after I met our friend, the Iceman, okay? And the reason I met John Scully online, and the way it all worked out, was it ended up me being a part of this show. But it was right after Vinny Paz's final professional fight, and that's when he fought Tucker Pugwell in 2004, right?
Right.
And I was on I had my AOL dial-up at the time, and something comes up like on a headline, hey, world champion fighter, because I had boxing as a hobby. World champion boxer retires after 50th win. And I clicked on it and it talked about Vinny's fight, and it opened up a chat room. I'd never been in a boxing chat room before, and this was like, oh my God, this is really cool. And I'm sitting there talking, and the topic was the Vinny Paz fight, his retirement fight. And as I was talking a little bit here and there, I happened to communicate with Iceman John Scully. And I remembered him, from his fight career, and we started talking back and forth, and, we shared each other's emails, and eventually that's what led me to be in contact with you, Rich. But all of a sudden, I'm on this chat room, and we're posting, and then we're posting like on message boards, so on and so forth. A day later, I get a direct email from a person I don't know. And the title of the email was Yo Moron. I'm like, what? Okay. And then all it said, like in all lowercase letters, it looked like it was being written by like an 8-year-old, was like, Yo Moron, the Tasmanian idiot, worst boxer of all time. Why don't you take what you know about boxing and throw it in the ocean? I'm like, and at first I'm thinking, like, who writes this shit, Did mommy let you have the keyboard for a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, and then normally my finger's on the delete, but we know that's not my style. So I'm like, yo, jackweed, I don't know who the hell you are, but you can take your opinion, shove it up your motherfucking ass, and go to hell. And I'm thinking it's over now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice potty mouth. Bet you kiss your mother with that mouth. I said, you know what? I'd rather have a potty mouth like this than, and I said something very derogatory and maybe questioning his, let's just say I considered him the bitch in a prison. And that he was a professional at it. And then he never responded from that. But I'm like, you know what? If anybody wants to, yo, moron, you want to say that to my face?
Right.
Because if I got an issue with somebody, I have no problem saying it to you. But at the same time, why do I gotta have it? I don't need to have an issue with you. My issues with people are generally the ones that started with me.
Exactly.
And I'm grateful in that, for life. And I thank every day that I started this boxing journey 25 years ago, because that's one of the things that I learned. I learned it from Dr. Cox. I learned it in South Philadelphia. I learned it by going to the fights and watching a lot of these guys, these true professionals, how they conducted themselves inside and outside of the ring. I learned it in the sparring sessions in the gym. And I'm like, because when I first started this, I was so ingrained. I watched a lot of fights. Don't get me wrong. But in my mind, I was like, almost like you're going into a Rocky movie where it was a good guy and a bad guy, and the bad guy was evil, and you had to beat him. And then when it was over, okay, then you could maybe acknowledge them and be okay with them. But going into it, you had to hate them, and they were bad, and they wanted to kill you. No, you learn that it's not Hollywood. And I'm thankful every day that I learned the humility and the humanity of it.
Right. Well, 9 times out of 10, when we used to interview a lot of boxers and we'd ask that question, what do you love most about the sport? They would say either the camaraderie or just the respect and the admiration that people have because, you know how to handle yourself, basically. But, yeah, then I used to always get people that would ask about me and you, and the thing we used to always joke about if we ever fought, and they'd be like, "How do you fight your best friend anyway? Like, how would you even fight any friend and actually be serious about it? Like, don't you have to hurt them? And would you be able to?" It's like, you don't understand. That's the guy you want to fight, Like, I look at the situation between Scully and another guy that just entered the 40-plus club, Tommy Rainone.
Yep.
And
those are great.
I served a little bit as the referee between their smack talk a couple nights ago, a couple weeks ago.
Oh, they're great. I love those stuff.
And
I'll tell you.
That was funny. They're great.
Speaking of Tommy Rainone, when we interviewed him, about two or so years ago.
Yep.
And I covered a fight card probably back in 2007-ish at the Blue Horizon. 7 or 8. It was shortly after I started covering fights with you. And Tommy Rainone was on the card. First time I'd seen him fight. Talented kid. Wasn't much of a puncher. Very good boxer. And he's from New York, so he's coming down. He's fighting in Philly. He's obviously the favorite fighter. But the girls next to me, who I did not know, despised him because he was from New York. And because these are Philly girls, fuck New York, and they're getting all fired up and everything. So now, the whole fight in the Blue Horizon, when you're in that balcony, as I've told you many times, you can talk to the fighters. The fighters can hear you. That's like I said, Rich Stewart, Mike No Joke Stewart's brother, whose birthday it is today, came up in the audience one time and his buddy punched that guy in the face because the guy was heckling him after a fight. So these girls are booing the shit out of Tommy Rainone, and he was just smirking at him and laughing, and he wins the fight. And remember, I'm sitting right next to one girl, and she's like right next to me, and she's like elbowing me. Fuck him! That cocky son of a bitch! Knock him out! Kick his ass! And she's loud, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, hope this guy don't think I'm with her, because I certainly ain't. And I told him that on the air. I said, Tommy, you have fun how you fought the Blue Horizon. There were some girls that were booing the shit out of you. Well, I was sitting next to them, but I was not with them. And he was cool about it, and he laughed. But no, I enjoy him and Scully's banter on there, because they go back and forth, and they are funny.
We ought to get them on the same show one time. That would be
hilarious. That would be great. I would love that.
Or if we get Scully on next time, we'll patch him in as a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds good to me. Yeah. And I've told John a couple times, and I kid around with him a lot on Facebook, because what I like about Iceman and John Scully is John Scully really brings you into the humanity side of the sport. He tells a lot of his stories and a lot of his backstage stories, and he shows pictures. He said the one time he had a picture shown when Chad Dawson was literally just a teenager, and Dawson was sitting on a hotel bed, and they got a picture of him, and he's smiling at the camera, and all you see in the back, it was about 1 second from impact, was a stream of water from a like a super soaker, and it was the photo right before it nailed him in the back of the head. But John he'll share things like that, and he'll tell you some great stories from weigh-ins. He makes weigh-ins interesting.
I actually got the outside perspective on their trip with the USA Boxing Olympic trials and everything. When I was talking about that on the couple weeks ago, I think, on the show, where Ray Seals kept putting up his gold medal for every picture.
Yeah, every picture, right.
So I talked to Reggie Johnson the other night, speaking of former guests, and he's trying to do some stuff, and And probably will be another guest or a second time too. But he was giving me insight on the trip to the hood. He said when they went down to the hood to get those whatever it was sandwiches. It's like some kind of a pork thing that they do down south. And so it's the first time Scully had ever had this stuff, and normally he doesn't like pork, so.
Right.
It was a big thing for him to try this shit, and he tried it. But yeah, Reggie's doing good. Reggie's sounding good, and he's definitely. We got on the subject of a fighters association because obviously I have big interest in kind of highlighting that all the other ones that they've created so far have done jack shit. Especially the culinary union attempt there, which was not even an attempt; it was just totally fake. And then you got it was about 3 or 4 years ago. These guys from baseball and major sports all banded together to start another one that hasn't done jack shit. So, it's like obviously those type of direct fighter involvement associations are never going to work. Because you can't either really unionize or pseudo-unionize either boxing or MMA. So basically our discussion was around, well, how do we create something different? We have to go with an association that is fan-supported, fighter-supported, and benefactor-supported. So maybe you have memberships that everybody gets. You have a fan membership that people can go out and sign up for a certain fee every month that they pay, and they get maybe autographed pictures, a newsletter, little trinkets and stuff from the different organizations that could be involved. Maybe a drawing for fight tickets that they'll be entered into every month. There's all kinds of different things that you could offer. And then you have the fighter level, where they pay in and they get out of it paid opportunities to appear at events, maybe autograph signing setups, where they get paid for their autographs, meet and greets, all that stuff. And also, the big thing, legal advice for contract negotiations, any kind of financial documents that they need to put together. Also, obviously, financial advice from some kind of a expert or group of experts that we could pull together. And then on top of that, we could also provide them opportunities to make money just for appearing at an event, so it's like for the bigger fighters. And then you have the benefactor level, where these guys pay like big bucks, and they become the MVPs, and they have access to all kinds of autographed items, like big stuff. Maybe they get a fighter to show up at a party, their favorite fighter that's involved in the organization, or they get a bunch of fighters. And free tickets. We give them just flat out free tickets to fights, because we'll definitely, it would be something that would have to have a lot of money behind it, but it could steamroll fast if you do it right. And so he's trying to connect me to one of his friends who has a lot of ideas in that realm. And another guy we talked to on the show years ago, he was really good friends with Mildred Taylor. Kind of kicked off that idea in my head, but I haven't really delved into it for years since we talked to him. And now that I'm thinking more about it, it's almost
trying to remember what his name was.
Yeah, it's just baffling me that I can't remember it. But it was his basically foundation for the idea. But I would just take it to a different place, as he wanted to include wrestling and everything like that. And it's just, to me, the two core sports for this that need it the most are the UFC or MMA in general, but mostly the UFC. That's not a slip of the tongue, because the UFC has more problems than the rest of the MMA world. But it's the MMA world and the boxing world. Those two. And not even kickboxing. I mean, you never hear about bad kickboxing negotiations, fights, corrupt promoters. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't think it's needed as much as it is in regular flat-out boxing and mixed martial arts. And so the problem with another problem with a union is you're going to have people that are going to face backlash for joining it. Nobody's going to give you backlash for joining a fighters association if it's not sold as a union. It's sold as a support system for fighters. It's designed to support mainly the fighters, kind of like a Ring 8 deal, but you have a membership part of it too. So I like that idea of the membership, but you have to have it so that it's worth it. You have to have a setup where you have money going in, you have products and items and connections to make this shit happen. So we really have to start with major organization efforts to get all kinds of fighters first to sign on. So that's why Reggie was one of the perfect persons to talk about it with. I also got a friend request from Pat Miletich the other day. I don't know whether that's just because I have the same last name as his wife, but that was kind of interesting. It's the first time I got a friend request from a big fighter in a long time. Usually it's the other way around. I'll request them and they'll say, yeah, sure. But he would be a big one, too, to get involved, because he knows a lot of people and he's a big name. But anyway, yeah. That's something I definitely would want to be a part of. I don't know how much time I could devote to it at this stage, but I definitely kind of would recommend a couple things right off the bat, especially for the fighters. The financial advice, I'd send them Adrian Clark's book, Protect Yourself at All Times. We had him on the show, and he was very concise about the $1 million breakdown of what a fighter makes and how it's spent and who gets what. And a lot of fighters just are clueless to that. Even after being in the sport for 10 years, they don't know how the money works. They just get their paycheck and they say, okay, I accept your explanation for why I'm only getting this much. And also, too, I talked about it with Reggie. If you look at all the sports out there in the entire universe here, obviously just Earth we're talking about, but who's taken advantage of more than fighters? Nobody, unless you count bear dancing or something. Animal fights. It's human fighters, and all the big name sports, boxing and MMA particularly. They're the easiest to take advantage of because they have the stigma of being stupid oafs who only have physical prowess and none mentally. So it's the area of sport that needs the most help for those guys to even out the playing field, and it would sort of be like a little bit different, but along the same lines as like the NFL and MLB with their players' associations. It's not quite a union. It's more like a club, but everybody's a part of it, so it works. But they do a lot of union-type stuff, and what I'm talking about is primarily just supporting the fighters with stuff they need and staying out of, like, trying to force promoters to do certain stuff. Just give the fighters the resources to fight back against the promoters that are trying to mistreat them. So that's something that definitely kind of pushes me to finish the whole book that I've been working on with the science thing too. That just kind of puts it all in perspective with how the UFC was even created. And then when Science went into bankruptcy, what did the Fertittas do? It showed their true colors. Instead of paying the piddly amounts that they owed to their fighters, they paid their company sponsorship through Science first with their own money that they pumped into Science, and then they took it into bankruptcy. Like, all the money's gone. We paid it to ourselves. And they left their fighters hanging. And even the biggest bonehead was Matt Serra. He went back after they denied him his money from winning the Ultimate Fighter that one season. They didn't pay him his contract. He went back. He was the first fighter to go back and put that stupid Science hat on. But yeah, don't even get me started on that. With Fight News Unlimited too, I mean, it's obviously kind of more of a labor of love for all of us. So, yeah, we could do this for the rest of our lives, but I think it would have a much bigger impact if we could get involved in something that really changes the sport. And, if we get enough people together just on the friggin' email list that I have probably in my Gmail inbox from setting up interviews over the years, I mean, we could really make a dent. But I would definitely have to get some people involved that would do more of the legwork than I could do, so I just don't have the time. I got a million other things going on. But it's, just talking with guys like Reggie just makes me mad, just pissed off about the whole situation. And the only way to really fight back against that is to act on it. Because if you just sit there and talk about it and criticize the system, I mean, unless you're reaching millions of people every day who are going to act on what you suggest, it's really not getting anywhere. People will love what you have to say, and they'll support it, and they'll read it, but what are they really going to do about it? Whereas with something like this, they could really do something. They could provide some funds, and they could, be a part of it. And like we've always said, what is the problem with a lot of these boxing lulls where it's just kind of falling off the map, or even MMA where it's not doing so well? It's because a lot of the fans don't know the fighters. So that solves that problem too, because these entry-level fan memberships could have opportunities to really get to know the fighters. Through autograph situations and going to local fights and getting opportunities to do meet and greets, all that stuff. Just like it would be like a fan club for them, but for every fighter on the planet, if we could get it set up that way. But yeah, something I could definitely get into. And I'm sure there would be room for you guys if we got it off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, thank you.
So on that note, we'll talk next week. And one of the things, too, that makes me think is we really got to get these guys on the show. I love just shooting the shit, but I wouldn't mind just saying, hey, folks, these are the top 3 fights of the weeks in each sport, and here's our guest. And get back to
Sounds good to me.
Doing a lot more interviews. I just kind of got discouraged after the Shamrock went to shit. But we got our recording situation straight now, so I'll work on it. Next couple weeks, we're going to get back to the guests.
Sounds good.
Have a nice little schedule. And that'll be a good start, too, to kind of kick that idea around to some of those people. And we'll see what happens. But I really think this is going to be a big year. 2020, it's not just hindsight. It's big. It's going to be big. I'm going to get all the finances, too, I'll need to be comfortable with my dad's situation. The probate, once that gets all finalized this year. So it's going to be a big year for big things.
And you remember, this is the Chinese year of the rat.
All right.
And that means we're very tough, very industrious. Rats know how to survive and scramble.
Right.
So
it's also supposedly the year we're supposed to get another plague from some of the memes I've been reading out there.
Fantastic.
Speaking of rats. Anyway, we gotta call it quits here. Till next week. We're running out of disk space, actually.
Okay.